And also, if you're in the theater and online, good morning to you. I hope you're awake and you've had your coffee. If you're still sleeping and you need to make a real quick exit for a donut and some coffee in the cafe, do it now, because we're jumping into a new series today. And you're going to need some energy this morning as we dive into this. And so if you happen to be brand new, my name is Joe, and I just want to say we're very, very glad that you're here today. My wife Courtney and I will be hanging out in the lobby afterward today, and we would love to meet you. Before you go, but we're kicking off a new teaching series today called Project Hope. And so this is not something that's new. If you've been around Riverbend a while, you probably already know that this is sort of some common language, a core part of who we are. So it's really more than a series. This teaching series is just going to take us back to this core kind of thing that we focus on. So Project Hope. Now, back in July, here's what we did. We did a series called We Are Hope. And you maybe have seen the t-shirts that say We Are Hope on them. And as we looked at it, what that was sort of a vision that has guided us over the last several months as we have worked through it. So when I laid it out, it was really about a 4 to 5 month vision. It was a smaller window that led to larger pieces of this. But I want to walk back through that before we go today, just to remind you where we were and where we are. The first thing we talked about was mobilize. That was the first piece of this vision. Over the next 4 to 5 months, 100% of those that call Riverbend home would engage in several things. And one of those was getting to know a neighbor that is not like you, getting to know a neighbor. The second one was growing in a small group. The third one was giving through serving in the church. And many people right now all across our campus are serving. That'll come into the 11 o'clock service after this. And so we've seen that. And then going through Project Hope. As Pastor Ben talked about, you can already register for that. And then the last one is generosity to support the vision as we go. And so the second piece of it was maximize. And so maximize, and what we mean by that, our current facility, how can we take this and use it to the maximum ability? How can we get the most people, minister to the most kids? How can we do this? And so you already see a lot of changes going on around our campus. We're giving more kids, more space to our kids. In fact, we're going to give just about all of our own campus space except this room to our kids. As we're giving up our office complex, our staff is going to be going to more of a shared environment because our kids have outgrown it. If you go back there in some of those classrooms, you're like, Lord, bless our River Kids workers, because they're packed in there with the, in some of the places. And so we're able to give up our office complex in the next few months. You're going to see more work going. But the third thing was this, to multiply. And that really is all of what we've asked God to do. Multiply your church. Now, specifically, the thing that I wanted you to pray with us about was multi-site. Looking to the point of going, God, would you want to do this? Would you want us to launch into another community close by? And so we would ask God to double it. Now, here's what I'd say. Riverbend, you have been incredible. God has been faithful over these last 4 months. So you've been committed and generous, and weekly people have come to know Jesus, to find new life in him. And so just a few things. We don't often talk about specific numbers, but I felt led this morning just to give you a tiny snapshot of just a few weeks in the life of Riverbend. Because when you just sit here or maybe you watch online, you don't see all the things happening. 2 weeks ago, 31 people joined the church through membership class. A little different than how we used to do it, but 31. Some of you guys are probably in here, but 31 people said, I believe so much in Riverbend Church that I want to partner with this church. So 31 people. Last Sunday, 6 people went public with their faith, and that has happened on a monthly basis, people saying yes to Jesus. This entire fall season, we've had nearly 100 in our River Kids environment back there. So that's a lot of kids running around and a lot of donuts and a lot of fire, juice power back there in River Kids. If you saw their capes last week, yes, they're wide open. Babies to 5th grade, there's about 100 kids there. Small groups have continued to grow. I'm a 100% guy. We're at about 70% of the people who attend Riverbend that are a part of small groups. So see, you owe the 3 out of 10, I'm coming after you for small group. Financially, you have blessed us to say yes to everything in our path. Your generosity to give on a weekly and monthly basis, it's blown us away. Been able to say yes, and our student ministry, which is, I'm an old student pastor, so to see our 6th through 12th grade and even our college students, that group growing and growing and growing over the course of the months has been crazy. The last 4 months has been one of the biggest growth trajectories they've seen. And we continue to pray about where this location will be. We don't know yet. You're going, are you holding something back? No, I'm going to tell you. As soon as I know, we're going to go for it. We're going to pray over it. But just a snapshot of everything God is doing right now. Isn't it crazy? Isn't it crazy that we get to be a part of this incredible work of the Lord? And so here's the danger. And the reason I tell you some of that. Do you know what the danger is for where we are right now? I call it cruise control. Do you know that once you get healthy and once you start going, man, we got people and God's good, and the temptation is to press cruise control. But here's what I found out about me this week, because I never really thought of it before. Did you know that I almost never use cruise control in my vehicle? You go, well, you're not very smart. Yeah, probably not. I probably would have saved me from a ticket or two in my life. But some of you are like me, like you actually like to drive the car. Like, I'm not going to get a Tesla. Why? It's not because I'm anti-green or whatever. I want to drive my car. I want to drive my truck. That's just me. Maybe it's wrong. It's me, though. I like to. But what I learned is I'm not a cruise control guy. I'm a let's grab another gear guy. Anybody, people like that in the room? I'm going to grab another gear. And so I told Pastor Ben that we were talking, it's dangerous because sometimes you can hit cruise control. And I think the Lord is asking us to lean in even more to our community, to things going on around us. And so here's what I want to do. I want to take you back to a question that I posed in July. And it's a question that I haven't been able to get it out of my mind because the Lord's been convicting me over it. And here it is. Am I willing to do anything short of sin to bring hope to my neighbors? And by hope, capital H hope, the hope of Jesus. Am I willing to do anything that it takes? So as a church, we will not sin against the Lord and calling it or excuse it. Well, we're just doing whatever it takes. We won't do that. That doesn't honor the Lord. But we will lay down our preferences, make changes, give more away, deal with our own attitudes and our own hurts at times, and keep pressing forward to bring the hope of Jesus to our neighbors. And so the question I got to start with before we talk about this invitation from Jesus today is, are you willing to do anything short of sin to bring hope to your neighbors? To fight for unity, to fight that people may find new life in Him. So here's the beauty of it. Even if you're brand new to Riverbend, you go, I've only been here a few weeks, Pastor. Like, I'm barely getting to know the place. You're just as in as people that have been here years. You don't have to hang around forever to be in. You can be in at the moment that you decide, I'll say yes to that question. I want to be a part of this mission. I love it. I want to be a part of it. And so how do you answer the question? Are you willing to do anything short of sin to bring hope? Here's what I want to do. There's great purpose in answering that question and how you answer it. I want to spend the rest of our time today on this invitation that Jesus gave to His disciples. And also, I believe the invitation that He lays out before us every day. That we decide if we'll hear from the Lord, this is a conversation I think God will have with you every single day. And so I want to talk about this hope that we have first. When we talk about Project Hope, I can't talk about that without hope. You can't give away what you don't have. And so I want to take you back to Hebrews chapter 6. Here's what it says. Therefore, we who have fled to Him for refuge. And so Paul's right here. The first piece of this tells us, how do we receive this hope of Christ? Well, flee to Him for refuge. Another way to say, I ran away from my ways and I ran to Christ. I hid myself in Him. I committed my life to Him. I surrendered to Him. All those things mean I fled to Him for refuge. So those who have fled to Him for refuge can have great confidence as we hold to the hope that lies before us. So hope is out in front of us. Hope is something that we should have confidence in. It says this hope is a strong and trustworthy anchor for our souls. Now here's what you got to catch about that. This trustworthy anchor for our soul does not mean that our life will not be shaken. It means that no matter where life shakes you, that your soul will not be shaken. You are anchored internally. In fact, life may beat you up and kick you down and toss you around, but you will have, no matter what happens externally, you have an internal hope. That's what it says. This hope is a strong and trustworthy anchor for our souls. And so let me define hope for you based on this right here. Hope is this. I put this in your notes if you're taking notes. This is a confident expectation that the good thing God has promised us will actually happen. So when you say, I hope, as a believer, you're not just saying, well, I wish some good things, or maybe I'll get lucky and something will happen, all right? You could use hope in another way, like, yeah, I hope I get lucky on whatever, or I hope I'm blessed in this area of my life. But hope defined biblically is a confident expectation that the good thing God has promised will actually happen. We who have fled to him for refuge, we have confidence as we hold to hope that lies before. So it's promises that hasn't happened yet, but we have confidence in it. So when you say, I hope in Jesus, do you know what you're doing? You said, I have hope. You're saying this. I have confidence that my God has promised me some things written in his word, and I'm going to live as though they're true. Even if I don't experience it right now, I'm going to live as though they are true. And so when it comes to hope, we call our community mission Project Hope. In fact, you'll see a little nook when you walk in out there. It has a sign. It says Project Hope. That's because we kind of stay focused on that. And you're going to see some things happening in there over the next few weeks. But we call that a 3 days of hope that's coming up soon. We call that sort of our outreach arm of our church, the way that we stay focused on the community. But I wanted to distinguish some grammar to remind us that Project Hope actually could be used in two different ways grammatically. And here's the first one, Project Hope. That is our calling to build a better community in Jesus' name. One of our core values, community matters. We will always be looking externally and not just focus internally. We care for each other internally, but we're focused on looking out, God, what can we do to love people in your name, to bring hope to people? And so we believe that even if people that drive by this building, we're on a pretty busy highway here. Supposedly, according to the statistics, 60,000 people a week, at least 60,000 people see our building every single week. We get that number from billboards. We were at billboards. So 60,000 people will see that billboard in a week that goes up. And so in some ways, our building is a billboard as people ride by it. It's just a tool. It's not the church. It's only the church when the people step inside. You know that, right? When the people of God step inside, then it becomes a church. Other than that, it is a building, but it's a tool that God has given us to use. And so Project Hope is us loving this community, no strings attached. We want people to know that even if you never choose to believe what I believe, I'm going to love you anyway. We're going to sacrificially give with no strings attached. We're going to love with no strings attached. But there's another way of looking at this, distinguished from the grammar. Here it is, Project Hope. Say this with me, project. So when you see the sign, you've probably thought in your mind, that's Project Hope, right? If you're country boy, project, you got to draw it out a little bit. Project Hope, though, is actually when you take it personally. That's putting the hope of Jesus on display through your life. Putting the hope of Jesus on display through your life. Have you ever thought about yourself as a billboard? You go, no. Well, mess it up for you real quick. Every day that you go out of your house, you are a billboard for something. I mean, Georgia Bulldogs, go Dogs, right? Some of you billboards this morning. I see my little dude right there. Go Dogs out there. Some of you are Tennessee fans and Louisiana fans. You know what? We'll settle that when we get to heaven. Here's the thing. We are billboards for something on a regular basis in our world. Every time you go out of your house, you are a billboard for something. As a believer, do you know what we have to take into account? God has called us to put his hope on display every time we go out of the church, every time we go out of our house, and even in our homes. Here's what Jesus said, Matthew 5. He looked at his disciples. He said, you're the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that can't be hidden. You know what he's saying? You're like a billboard up on a big hill with lights at night. People can see it from miles around, this hope that you're projecting in your life. Now, at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, he chose a group of 12 men we know as apostles. And you could even argue that he chose the most unlikely guys. He didn't go to the seminaries. He didn't go to the colleges. He didn't go to the boardrooms where the CEOs were. He went down by the lake and to the tax collector. He went to places that none of us would choose leaders from. It was almost like as if to say, I'll take the people that the world thinks is least likely to change the world, and I'll show you how powerful the gospel is. I'll change the world through these normal, everyday, average people. But at the beginning of his ministry, he chose 12 guys whom he discipled to project hope to the world. And this move of Jesus right here, what he said, you're a city on a hill, what he was saying is not just generational. He said, you're like a city on a hilltop and it's going to shine until I return. And so what I want to do is look at this invitation, because that's where it all started. Started with Jesus looking at these guys and giving them an invitation to join him. And it was a very personal invitation. So I want to look at this today. Project Hope invitation Jesus offered to his disciples. Look at this. He says one day Jesus was walking along the shore of the Sea of Galilee. So if you ever needed like a verse to prove that God likes for you to go to the beach, there it is. Along the shore of the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, also called Peter, and Andrew, throwing a net into the water, for they fished for a living. Jesus called out to them, come follow me, and I'll show you how to fish for people. And they left their nets at once, and they followed him. A little further up the shore, he saw two other brothers, James and John, sitting in a boat with their father Zebedee, repairing their nets. And he called to them, come too. They immediately followed him, leaving the boat and their father behind. So it's important to know that Jesus did not, this wasn't the first time Jesus met these guys. If you read in the other gospel accounts, we know that they had already had introductions. They already knew a little bit about Jesus. They'd already spent a little bit of time together, but this was, in his day, a rabbi. It was very normal for a teacher to reach out to students and say, do you want to come do life with me and be my disciple? And so that wasn't uncommon. But Jesus walks down by the seashore and calls out to these guys who are there. It sounds like they've all just come in from a fishing trip, or maybe they're getting ready to go out. Most likely coming in from a fishing trip here. Follow me and I'll teach you how to fish for people. Now, here's what I want to do is I'll walk through this. You know, if you've been listening to me teach at all, you know, my mind works weird. So when I walk through this, I start seeing things and I'm like, God, I don't even understand how I see this, but you're speaking to me on this. I want to show you in my time as I read through this passage what the Lord showed me about the invitation. Here's the first one. If you're taking notes, I want you to write this down. Jesus' invitation is to those who are already working. Not idle, not sitting around doing nothing going, you know what, God, I wish you would call me to be a pastor. I wish you'd open the door for me, Lord. See, here's the thing. I heard somebody say the other day, I've been praying and praying and praying, but I didn't see God start working until I started praying on my feet. And go, that's pretty good right there. Sometimes, listen, and this is not me saying get ahead of God or sin against God. I think more often we use getting ahead of God as our excuse for doing nothing. I don't want to get ahead of God. I don't want to move too fast. Why? This world's moving fast. We're moving at breakneck speed in our culture. So why shouldn't the gospel move as well? Not idle, but Jesus' invitation was to guys who just came in from a fishing trip or were they were working hard. There was a quote that changed my life years ago. I read a book called Through the Gates of Splendor, and it's by Elizabeth Elliot. She's the wife of a missionary, Jim Elliot, that I've studied his life, to the Auca Indians. And so she said a quote, though, and it was about the book. It wasn't in the book, but she said a quote that changed me forever. And here's what she said. She said, you can't steer a parked car. She was speaking, I believe, to a group of college students who were trying to figure out what God wanted them to do with their life. And you know what she was getting at? If you're praying and you're headed in a holy direction, sometimes you just got to head in that direction and get the car rolling. And guess what? The Lord that you serve is sovereign enough that if you're rolling in the wrong direction, he'll take the wheel and he'll turn it in the right direction. Just start rolling towards a good and holy direction. The Lord is powerful enough. And so the guys that Jesus was calling, they were out working. Not putting out resumes and just sitting at home watching Netflix. Even if they were putting out resumes, they were also out fishing. They were doing something. And so, let me give you some practical advice here. If you know God is calling you to ministry, do you know what you should do? Start doing ministry. That may lead you to school. That may lead you to who knows where, but just start doing it. If you're called to be an artist, start painting, start creating, start writing. If you're called to be a missionary, start serving people now, right where you are. Don't wait on the mission field far away. By the way, the United States has become the mission field, by the way. What we used to have to go far away to see, it's right down the street from your house. You just may be overlooking it. If you're called to be a leader, start leading now by serving other people. Figure out how to be the best servant that you can. Here's the deal. You may have to fundraise in order to fulfill your calling. Now, what's that mean? Did you know God never promised you He's going to pay you to do what you're called to do? You may actually have to fundraise. There's a guy, Bob Goff. Some of you may have heard of him. That's his famous statement. He's a lawyer, but he actually is known as more of a ministry guy. But he says, I fundraise so that I can do what God's called me to do. And I love that. I kind of adapted that because for many years of my life, that's where I was too. Fundraising in order to fulfill the calling. See, here's what I'm saying. If God has a call on your life, start doing it. But that means that you may also have to do something else to make ends meet while you're also serving. Now, as you go and as you pray, God may begin to marry those two things together, but very rarely from day one does He show you how to do both and. Usually you got to go, God, I'm going to chase you, and also I'm going to have to do something else to make ends meet. Just start doing it. Just get up and start doing it right now. But Jesus calls two sets of brothers here, Peter and Andrew, James and John, and already I believe He knew they had hearts for ministry. They may have been going, man, we wish we could be like Jesus and go do what Jesus does. But you know what they were doing? They were getting up and going out with their dads fishing to make a living. Wasn't a glorious job. They were fishing to do it. They were employed there. Now, here's what I did. I looked through Scripture and I started thinking about stories. Did you know that I can take you to almost every single powerful man or woman of God in Scripture whom God called and anointed their life and used them? Do you know where He found them? Working. Busy. King Saul, do you know what he was doing when he was anointed king? He was out searching for his father's donkeys that had gone missing. David was keeping his father's sheep. They had to send to the pasture to bring him in to anoint him. The shepherds that we talk about at Christmas, we're going to talk about in a few weeks, they were out guarding the flocks at night while everybody else is hanging out in town. Matthew is working at a tax collector's table when Jesus goes and knocks, hey, I want you to come follow me. Moses was out on the backside of the desert tending his father's sheep where he had this burning bush encounter with the Lord. He was working. Gideon, this mighty man of God you read about in the book of Judges who did miraculous things. You know what he was doing? He was threshing wheat inside of a wine press whenever the Lord came to him. Listen, if you'll just start doing something, God will often come right to where you are. Do you know what I was doing up till 2008? I thought about this as I read it. I was sanding hardwood floors and doing construction, and literally in 2008, I was actually hauling trash down the beach in Galveston, Texas. I'd gone out to kind of to seek out maybe a possible new business venture after Hurricane Ike hit. We wanted to help, and too, there was opportunity. So I flew out, and I spent about a month out there. And during that month, I too was on the beach whenever the Lord solidified my call. Now, this was a dirty beach. It was destroyed in devastation, and I was there. But the Lord met me on the beach, too, and called me. When I got back home, I looked at my dad, and I said, Dad, I know God's called me, and he agreed. He'd been seeing the Lord working in me, and I went full-time vocational ministry. But for about 7 years of our marriage, I worked full-time in construction, and we were passionate about doing the work of the Lord, especially next generation ministry. That's where we started. And so he found them on the beach, and here's what Jesus did. He called out to them, come follow me, I'll show you how to fish for people. So notice the invitation here. Jesus comes and he says, hey guys, you're gonna have to get out of the boat and come follow me. And so again, one of my weird thoughts as I'm reading this, you know what the Lord spoke to me? This invitation requires shoes. Requires shoes. See, Jesus doesn't often tell you where you're gonna go and all the details of it. You don't know where your calling will lead you, but here's what you have to wrestle with. Am I going to put my shoes on and follow him? Every single day, you put some sort of shoes on before you go out of your house, right? You decided maybe one of the last things you do, if you're like Courtney, you change them like 17 times before you go out of the house, and that's another story. But you put some sort of shoes on before you go outside the house every day, and usually they're appropriate for where you're going. And you may not know everything those feet, everywhere your feet's gonna step that day, but you just put your shoes on and you got out the door. See, shoes, you know what they represent? The intentional act of obedience. God, wherever you put, I'm gonna put my shoes on, and as I do, today I'm gonna be obedient to. Do you know what the last thing you do every day before you go out, if it's put your shoes on, you could say, you know what? These are not just shoes, these are hope shoes. I'm about to put hope in these shoes and go out and be a light like a city on a hill. You ever thought about that? Everywhere your foot steps, God is stepping if you're a follower of Jesus. Everywhere that shoe is going to take you that day. You know what this can do for you? If you're bored in your job and frustrated because God's not moving things fast enough and you feel stuck, wake up and decide that those shoes are your hope shoes. As I put these on, I'm putting hope into them. And what will happen is God may not change your circumstances, but he'll change your perspective. You'll start stepping differently going, oh God, you have me here. You've located me in this job that I feel sort of stuck in. I wish I could do something else, but I know I'm supposed to be here right now. And so God, I'm just gonna be hope. But listen, it requires Jesus. Because here's the thing, you have to have shoes on to follow Jesus. Followers of Jesus actually follow Jesus though. How many times do we miss the power of God because we claim to follow Jesus, but when he says, deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me in this area of your life, we hold back. So Lord, I prayed this week over you, I prayed over myself that God would help me put my shoes on and go out and be hope. Get my attitude right. That's that last chance before you walk out of your house if you're putting your boots on to go, you know what, God, I need you to get my attitude right. You ever had just a hard morning at home? How many of you ever went through that? Just a hard morning with you, with the kids. By the time you got home that night, you didn't even know if you're going to have a family. You ever had just one of those days before? We way too holy to admit that on Sunday morning. You ever have a tough day? You know what you can do, though? Just let it be a reminder from this point forward. No matter how hard it was, I'm about to put these shoes on and go be hope to somebody. I'm actually going to get out of the boat, out of the house, follow Jesus. Here's the third step, or the third part of this invitation, that Jesus' invitation, it provides OJT, on-the-job training. Did you notice he didn't say, now I want you to pack up and go away to school for 10 years and then come meet me on the beach? And this is not me being against education in any kind of way. Jesus gave them education, but sometimes we use excuses instead of just following. But Jesus took away all excuses. He said, I'm going to teach you how to fish for people. There's an old saying my pastor used to say, or it was actually a missionary, Roger Mullins, who came to my church when I was a kid, and I revere him. He's still alive, and he's an older man today, but God used this guy. Every year they would come through, maybe a couple times a year. But he ran orphanages in Albania, and just a man of integrity and a man of honor and a man who committed his whole life to the gospel. And he used to say something. He says, you know, God doesn't call the equipped, God equips the called. And a lot of people have used that over the years, but we're talking back in the 80s. I was a little boy, and I remember him saying that and then explaining it. See, it's possible that you won't even know what God has gifted you for until you put your shoes on and try something. But once you try it, see, some people in here know what I'm saying. You've gotten a taste of it. You stepped out on faith and you did something. And once you get a taste of it, there's a fire that lights in your heart. And you go, God, I want to do more of this now. I'm ready to do this. Lord, I didn't even think I could speak. I didn't think I could teach. I didn't think I could do whatever it is that's before me. But Lord, as I stepped out, you gave me what I needed, and you begin to teach me how to do it. In following Jesus, he will always give you the on-the-job training you need. That may lead you to a bunch of places. But if you follow, it'll take you. Jesus said this, I will teach you how to fish for people. I'll make you become fishers of men. I'll make you. He took passion and skill set that these guys already had. You know what he did? He transformed it into something they could use for the kingdom. As I looked at this invitation, here's the fourth thing I noticed, that Jesus connects our greatest passion with eternal purpose at his invitation to project hope. For these guys that were fishermen, maybe they were burned out on fishing, but there was probably a chance, since they'd grown up in it, that there was probably a love for the outdoors and a love for being on the water deep inside of them. Now, they may not have wanted to do it every day and be cold and be wet and be nasty, but then again, they may have actually loved it. They may have had an enjoyment in them about when it came to fishing. What Jesus did is he married the passion and the skill set already inside of them. He married that to their eternal purpose. He said, you're a fisherman now. You know how to catch fish. If you'll come follow me, I'll take that natural skill set that you have and that passion you have to go find the fish, locate them. And back then it wasn't as much of a line as it was a net, but drop a net on the fish. I will show you how to do that for the kingdom's sake. See, as a pastor, I see a lot of people who search for purpose outside of Christ. And you just want to grab them by the shoulders and go, you can't find it. But I try to be really nice and I pray with them. And I go, I just want them to, if you'll just surrender to Jesus, that's the first step to finding your true kingdom purpose. But you have to be nice and go, I hear you. Let me pray for you. But really what you want to say is you can't find your eternal purpose, the thing you were created for, until you first submit to the Lord. And here's what he'll do in that submission to say, yes, Jesus, I'll follow you. He'll take your greatest passion and he will marry it to your eternal purpose. So sometimes I see people when they're searching for purpose, they kind of jump from job to job to job to job, trying to find the next thing. Or they jump from relationship to relationship, even marriage to marriage to marriage, thinking, well, if I can just find the next one, then it'll be great. House to house to house. We see this lately. It's a good time to sell, hard time to buy, right? Friend group to friend group to friend group, usually painting a picture of a great life in their feed. But inside, often, if you don't know what your purpose is and you hadn't found any greater purpose that's bigger than you, you feel purposeless. And here's the thing. Jesus designed you. He called you masterpiece. And he made you for a specific good purpose. And here's what I truly believe. I've watched this over my years. God has wired a passion and a skill set into you, whether you fully developed it or not, that will also marry with your kingdom purpose, your eternal purpose. Those two things will go together somehow. Sometimes you paint the picture of that's only for preachers. Like if you're passionate about preaching the word of God and you're called to lead and be a pastor in the church, there's only a few of those, though. There are a lot of business people. There are a lot of people that are entrepreneurs. There are a lot of leaders in our community. There are a lot of leaders of homes. There's thousands in our community and hundreds even inside of Riverbend Church. And so it takes faith and courage to follow him, though, and let him do the connecting. It takes weeks or months or years sometimes to get to that point where that passion and that purpose connects and you go, I finally found what I was created for. You know what sometimes it'll encourage you to do? We don't do this often. We get most of our information scrolling. I'm not saying that's all bad. You can find a lot of stuff. Do you know what'll change your life though? Find a person who's 20 or 30 years ahead of you and get on their calendar can I take you for coffee, for lunch? Can I just have a phone conversation with you? Somebody that you see, you know what? They're kind of where I would love to be one day. Don't find somebody 2 or 3 years ahead of you. You can learn from them. Find somebody 20 or 30 years who's willing to tell you the truth about how hard it was to be successful in the Lord, how hard it was to find this passion and this eternal purpose and bring them together and listen to what they have to say. God may just give you the encouragement to keep going. Jesus called James and John, and it's a little bit different. It says that Peter and Andrew left their boat and they came. But look at this. Immediately they followed him, leaving who? The boat and their father. They left the boat, they left their nets, they left their livelihood for that season, they left their father. And you know what? Maybe the expectation for these guys was that they were going to run the family business one day. You ever just read right over and sanitize things in the Bible like, oh, it was easy? I put myself in Zebedee's shoes. That's their dad. He's sitting in the boat looking out as his kids go, see you, Dad, we're going to follow Jesus. I know, you probably had these plans of making it easier life on you because we're going to take over the fishing business, but we're going to follow Rabbi Jesus, this new teacher that we feel very called to go follow. And here's what the Lord spoke to me. This is the hardest one to stomach, honestly. The invitation to project hope means letting go. I told you a little bit about my calling from the flooring and construction business into ministry. But did you know in 2008, my dad, I have so much respect for him because it took me some years to look back and go, my dad was Zebedee in the story. My dad invested in me and made life easy for me. I got to step onto his shoulders, a business that he'd built since I was a little kid, and reap the benefit of all the days where he wasn't making any money, where he was doing the grunt work of building a business. He let me step right in on his shoulders and start doing really well as a 22, 23-year-old young man. And I won't say I didn't appreciate it, I did. But in 2008, when I looked at my dad and said, Dad, I know God's called me to ministry and I'm going to be stepping out of this. He supported me and he smiled. And I said, maybe that was Zebedee. He was proud of his kids. You know what? It is going to be hard without you here on the boat. But it's really cool to see you moving towards Jesus. And they didn't have an understanding of Jesus like we do now completely. But I think he knew, you know what? God's all over this. God has this anointing and calling on their lives. And so my dad, in a lot of ways, after pouring 10 years into me, thinking I was going to run the business, he let me go, and not only let me go, supported me. See, maybe the only thing holding you back from stepping into projecting hope for the Lord is the fear of what you'll have to let go of. We have people that will show up every week on campus and watch online, and I know because I was one of these for years. You're so scared of what you got to let go of that you won't say yes to the Lord. You have to let go of some things to say yes. You have to say no to something in order to say yes. Now, you may be the only one standing in the way sometimes of a friend or a child's calling. And so listen, parents, you got to love your kids. You got to be their greatest encourager. You also have to be the truth teller and the disciplinary. You have to be all the above in their lives. But there's going to come a day and time where you have to let go. Your day is done. You will stunt their growth if at some point you don't trust the Lord with your kids, especially your grown kids. Let them go. Pray and trust God. We're not raising kids, we're raising adults. And at some point, you have to let them go. That's why it's important that you do what matters right now. You keep putting it off. No, right now, the urgency is one day in just a few years, I'm going to let them go, and they're going to be whoever it is that they decide to be. And so, letting go is difficult. But listening to this amazing promise that the Lord spoke to my heart. Jesus said, I assure you, everyone who's given up house or brothers or sister or mother or father or children or property for my sake and for the good news will receive now in return 100 times as many houses, brothers, sisters, mothers, children, and property, along with persecution. So Jesus kind of throws that in there. He says, anything you give up because you're chasing my calling. Now, this is not a disobedient act. This is not a sinful act. But there will come a time where you have to say, I've got to let go of some things in order to pursue the calling God has. But he throws this in there. In this world, you're going to receive 100 times, but it's also going to have persecution with it. But in the world to come, the new world, we just talked about it. When Jesus remakes this place and we move into our new home, he says, I'm going to give you 100 times what you gave up. And by gave up, I mean sacrifice. So I was going to move straight to the ending, and Thursday when I preached this message for the staff, I think it was Ben. Ben was like, man, you can't skip this part. I told them something. I said, I'm not going to say that though. And they said, no, you need to say it. Because I don't want to make it about me, and I also don't want you to think, oh, he's this holy guy that's so much better than everybody else in the world. But in 2010, I was faced with this very thing. I had all four of my grandparents alive, and we lived in a family compound. I mean, we're close by, dinners, and we're going over to mom's on Sunday afternoons. And do you know, God called me in 2010 to pack my stuff up and move to a new city, and I knew that call was there. But you know what the Lord showed me? The Lord showed me in those months, it was January, February, March, we were praying about it. We moved in, I think, July, but I began to pray about, like, God, you really want us to go here. It was sure. I met a guy in an airport, random meeting. God led to there, but led to Augusta. But the Lord spoke to my heart and said, you're probably not going to see your grandparents much before you do their funerals. And you go, that's not a nice thing for God to say, but it was a reckoning for me. I felt so strongly called, and I'd had all that time with my grandparents, but I knew that I was probably, Lord willing, only going to see them a handful of times because of the calling God had on my life. And I wrestled, y'all. I wish I could tell you I was just so obedient. Maybe some of those months, it took months to make this transition. Some of it was me going, I don't know if I can do this. I love my family. I love the time God's given me. And guess what? Over the next 3 years, I would do 3 of their funerals, not getting to see them very much. And one day the Lord spoke this verse to me, and he was like, do you believe me or not? I mean, you trust me to deliver your soul from hell. Will you trust me that I've already given you a great, good life, but there are other people that need hope, and I'm going to have to send you somewhere else to fulfill my plan? Will you trust me? You trust me with your soul. Will you trust me with the rest of the life that I've given you? And he brought me to this, and it was like the Lord just let it, you ever been reading the Bible and something just came and just hit you so hard, and I read it, and it was like he said, I'll give you 100 times in eternity. So one of the brighter moments of my life was saying, all right, Lord, let's go. So me and Courtney and our boys, we packed the U-Haul, and my family loved on us, and they sent us out. And here's what I'm claiming. In Jesus' name, there's nothing that I have given up in this world that he's not going to give me 100 times, 100-fold. And so I just want to stand in the gap and say, listen, don't hold back on the Lord. Our life is short, but our eternity is forever. We want to take as many people with us as we can. We want heaven to get bigger, and we want earth to get better in the process. But here's what we ultimately know. This earth's going to end badly one day before the Lord remakes it, before his return. There's nothing that you will let go of that God won't give you 100 times over again. That's his word. You got to decide if you believe it or not. It may not be family. It may be something else. There is nothing, according to Scripture, if God's leading you in a direction, there's nothing you let go of that God won't give you 100 times more of. Now, let me end here with our passion. Bottom line, your greatest passion and your eternal purpose, you know what happens? They intersect at where you project hope to people. Listen, I'm so glad you tuned in online with us today. I want to take just a moment and close out with you. One of the things that we've said here often is that people investment is the currency of eternity. That place where our greatest passion and our eternal purpose intersect, it's where we project hope to people. Let me translate all that for you. The only thing we're going to take into eternity is the hope of Jesus that we invested in the people around us, our family, our friends, our coworkers, our neighbors. And so I just want to get you to ponder that for a moment. Have you ever accepted that invitation of Jesus to put on your shoes, to follow him, to project hope? Sometimes we just get beaten down and off the path, Thinking back through the last couple of years, it's easy to understand how we could get self-consumed and just all the mess that we've had. So maybe today's is sort of a wake-up call to project hope again in your life. If you're a follower of Jesus, just an invitation back to him to go, God, I know you placed a fire inside of me for something. Lord, will you rekindle it? Lord, I know you have an eternal purpose for me. And God, I'm ready to let that be about other people in my life again, to project your hope to people. And so maybe the invitation is just for you to just come back and surrender to that place of going, God, I'm ready to put my shoes on this week and go. But it starts right now with that surrender of your heart. Do you know there's a lot of messages of hope that you can send out? I wrote down a few of them. First is this, that you can be forgiven. Now, here's the thing. You have to first receive that message before you can project that message. Have you accepted the forgiveness of Jesus over your life? Because see, the invitation, before you can accept this invitation to follow Jesus and to be his disciple, project his hope, you have to first receive his forgiveness. And so maybe that's what you feel in your heart today is the Holy Spirit drawing you into him. And here's all you need to do. If you feel that invitation, just go, Jesus, I surrender my life to you today. I'm ready to follow you. Just tell him in a prayer from your heart to his heart, right where you are, I'm ready to follow you. And listen, once you receive that invitation and you've already surrendered to that, you're ready to project hope to this world. Immediately God calls you. See, there's a lot of other messages of hope. One is your story isn't over. Another is this, you are loved. Another is this, you can be set free. Another is this, you matter. Another is this, you're not too far gone for God to save. But you have to receive those messages before you're ready to project those messages. And so the question is, have you truly received it? And if so, who is it in your path this week needs the hope of Christ to shine through your life like a city on a hill? So here's my prayer. Accept his invitation today. Whether you're surrendering to him for the first time or whether you know God's just reigniting that passion in your heart to get back up, to put your shoes on and to go. Be the hope of Jesus to people in your path this week. Listen, we love to celebrate with you. And so will you drop us a comment or a message or email? Let us know. If today you surrendered your life to Christ, we would love to know that and celebrate. But maybe today God has called you back to something that you already know, your purpose and your passion, it's there. But the Lord has called you back to that and just reawakened that in your soul today. Listen, we want to celebrate. Will you tell us your story? Shoot us a message, tell us the story. Know this, you matter, you're not alone, and we would love for you to be a part of projecting hope as we go through these next several weeks. God bless.